Maybe right.
It's complex, we need to write something.
Because.
Oh. That was due last period, thank you. You could be nice. I'm always nice, it's my downfall. No, it's really. Does everyone know what big essay they're writing of the prompts that I gave you? Shall we review? You have it?
Yeah, but also I had an idea for the paper.
Yes.
Hold on, I'm trying to find it. I wrote it down somewhere.
Do you have it? Choose one of the following prompts below. It looks like this.
Oh.
No. I'm gonna reprint for those. Yes.
I found mine, but I have to have permission to use it, right?
Oh, you were gonna do something different than what's on here?
Yeah, I didn't. It's not that I didn't like the other ones. It's just like.
This one was good. Compare and contrast the events, people, and places in the three expeditions or sallies of Don Quixote. So the first sally is just when he goes as far as the inn and then goes back home. The second is when he picks up Sancho Panza, and it's everything that we're doing now up to, we're almost to the end of, we're almost to the second part. We have to make it to page 461, so we'll finish that this week. Then we're done with the first part. That will be the second sally, and then the third sally is the last a couple hundred pages. So it's divided up into three. Why do you think there were three sallies rather than one long journey? Question one. Question two, how do the events of each of the sallies contribute to the development of the characters of Don Quixote and Sancho Panza? That's a pretty good paper. There's a lot to incorporate there. That's the first essay. How many people are going to do that one?
No. I don't know.
No. Don't know. Don't know. Don't know. No. No or don't know? No. Maria doesn't like that one. Don't know. Number two, consider the ways in which truth and justice are depicted in Don Quixote, paying particular attention to the historical and social context of the work. The Protestant Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, and the Renaissance. And I think I said Doc White's second conference, but I think I might have gotten which conference wrong, because there are 4 conferences. I might have got the second one was, yeah, so I should have had you listen to the third one, which I thought was the second one. Anyway. And then finally, reading books was, I don't like this one at all. Reading books was of paramount importance to many characters, including Don Quixote, Cardenio, Marcella, the New Acadians, the curate, the innkeeper, and the barber. Why do you think this might have been? Write an essay in which you consider the role of reading in the lives of these characters. Be sure to discuss your impression of what Cervantes is trying to communicate about reading books. Ugh. Does anyone like that one?
I actually kind of like that one.
No, these aren't my questions. These are IEW questions. You like that one, Anya?
I kind of do. If I could put in a little bit of like what we were talking about in religion class with the fairy tale, or no. Yeah, with like the fairy tale idea and why that's important.
Yes.
I don't
know. Like, how do we involve Cardenio in that?
Could you just choose the characters that you want?
I guess you could choose the characters you want. Yeah, you could choose whatever characters you want to do.
I mean,
Yeah. would go for that, if you wanna choose. I don't know, I don't love it. I don't love it.
I feel like there's a lot to write about, but we mostly discuss it.
Yeah, which helps, but you have to back it up with, you
But
know,
that's just looking through the whole book then, figuring out.
Yeah. the truth and justice one. Yeah, that was pretty good. Okay, so you need to be thinking about these things as we read so that you can be marking your quotes. So which one do I do? Which one do I do? Which one do I do? We've talked quite a bit about justice.
Hey, I sent you my idea in an email. I emailed it to you because while we were reading, I was making different prompts for it that like kind of incorporate a big chunk of what we read.
Okay, you wanna make that public or you just want it for you?
It can be public. I don't care.
Somebody should argue against it. So you
Why don't you do that?
can understand everything all the conference and you ignore it.
Can't, I can't read it properly, Coco, it's not coming on my phone. So I'll have to look at it later. Okay, in the meantime, we need to write something because there's gonna be a long time before we're done with this book. Where are you going with the things you're gonna be up that number more fun? We don't think that one.
Oh, we could write about how the similarities in the early trees are happening now, like all the letters people are writing now. What's very similar from them? We could write a good paragraph on that.
You just talked about Godfrey of de Bouillon. Does anyone know that name? If I say Godfrey, you say,
Right.
yeah, Crusades. Yeah, why is he bringing him up? And when the comedy is based on a fictitious story, how can they introduce historical events into it and mix in incidents that happen to different people at different times, and even then, with no attempt at verisimilitude, with obvious errors inexcusable on every account? The worst of it is that there are idiots who say that this stuff is perfect, and to look for anything else is to fish for dainties.
I'm saying because it's not historically accurate. And they just,
Sometimes things in stories aren't exactly historically accurate. Why?
because they have and passive into it and it's word of mouth, not written.
Well, and also the point of telling the story isn't the history, it's the lesson. What's that sounding like?
Parable in the Bible.
Parables in the Bible. Yeah. So therefore,
Parables are useless.
what's that?
Parables are useless and confuse the whole.
Well, it does sound like some modern day, okay, so I'll give you an example. I like to bring you the receipts. I like to bring you modern day examples so that you don't just think that this is fun with literature. I was walking, this was a couple years ago, and now I sit outside baseball all the time, baseball practice, but it was Irish dance. And I was talking with an Irish dance mom, we were walking while waiting to get some exercise in, getting our steps in, if you will. And I knew, though the woman did not tell me, I knew about her son. So I don't know how we got on the topic of the Bible, and got on the topic of homosexuality. And I said, and she was a Bible person, and I said, well, I don't really understand how you can argue for when the Bible specifically, like we got Sodom and Gomorrah, and we got the sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. There's kind of no way around that. What's the way around that?
Those were tales for a different time.
Yeah, those were tales for a different time. That's what she told me. So back then, in that historical and social context, God didn't want people to be doing that. But now, it's a different age. To which I responded,
Order of thousand years ago, somewhere now.
what? So why do we believe anything that's in the Bible if the Ten Commandments were written for a different age? Now, I happen to know that her son was of that persuasion, which is why she was obviously arguing that it couldn't possibly be against the Bible because she's a Bible person. Whoa. Then the Bible becomes absolutely meaningless because anything that you don't like, you can just say, well, that was for those people back then, it's not for now. What? They're acting like human nature changes. So, truth is truth, yeah? Regardless. So why am I bringing this up? Because some people will say, oh, the stories in the Bible should just be considered stories from that time. And we really shouldn't put any stock in them or gear our lives towards what St. Paul says in his epistles, because that was for those people then. And it's nice to think about what the people in Crete and Thessalonica and Corinth needed to do according to St. Paul. But today, it's quaint to read about it, but it's not going to affect our lives. You get me? You can really, if you're going to follow that philosophy, you can really write away anything that you read from the Bible as not applicable.
You can write away most of what you read.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not what God didn't mean it for our time. And when we come to sacred drama, what a multitude of false miracles they invent. What apocryphal and unintelligible plots. The miracles of one saint attributed to another. Even in their profane plays, they make bold to introduce miracles without any more reason or consideration than because they think that some miracle, or effect, as they call it, will go well, and that the ignorant public will enjoy it and come to the play. But all this is prejudicial to truth and to the detriment of history. It shames our Spanish wits before foreigners who observe the rules of drama with great strictness and consider us ignorant barbarians when they see the absurdities and extravagancies of the plays we write. Where did Protestantism begin? Point to the map. Germany. Okay, England. Do you really hear about Protestant Spain? Oh. So the learned people at the University of Paris and the Wittenberg, the University of Wittenberg in Germany, where Luther posted his 95 Theses, yeah? There, the learned people are saying with this miracle stuff. Those rubes over in Spain are still believing it. Get it? Get it? Spanish or Catholics. The Protestants have got it now, the up and coming, the new understanding, if you will, the progress. We're making progress in our understanding. Or as my friend who converted from Jewish to become Catholic and then converted out of Catholic told me, well, it was good for that time in my life, but I've outgrown it now. I understand when people still need it. They still need the nice little teachings that the church offers, but once you've progressed beyond it, you kind of grow up from that. That's what he told me. He's got 8 kids, 9 kids. He outgrew his marriage too. He's divorced. This is real life stuff. This is real life stuff. Consider us ignorant barbarians. When they see the absurdities and extravagances of the plays we write, it is not sufficient excuse to say that the principal purpose for which well-ordered states allow public plays to be acted is to give the common people a respectable entertainment and to divert the ill humors which idleness at times engenders. And that since any play can do that, whether it is good or bad, there is no reason to impose laws or compel writers and actors to compose their plays in a proper way, because as I have said, they can achieve their purpose with any play at all. To this I should reply that their purpose could be incomparably better achieved by good plays rather than bad ones, because the audience would come out from a well-written and well-constructed play, entertained by the comic part, instructed by the serious, surprised by the action, enlivened by the speeches, warned by the tricks, wiser for the moral, incensed against vice, and enamored of virtue. All of these effects a good play can work in the mind of an audience, however rough and sluggish. And it is absolutely impossible for a play with all these qualities not to amuse and entertain, satisfy and please, much better than one that lacks them, as most of the pieces generally played nowadays do. It is the fault of the poets who write them, for some of them know very well where they are wrong and are thoroughly conscious of what they ought to do. But as plays have become a marketable commodity, they say, and say truly, that the players would not buy them if they were not of the usual kind. And so the poet tries to adapt himself to the requirements of the manager who pays him for his work. The truth of that can be seen by the infinite number of plays written by one of the most fertile genius of these kingdoms, with so much splendor and so much grace, with such well-turned verses, such choice language, such serious thought, and lastly, with so much eloquence and in so lofty a style that the world is full of his fame. Shakespeare. Who writes really good plays that have everything you need? Shakespeare. And it entertains the dummies, and it elevates. It's like Bugs Bunny. Anyone ever watch Bugs Bunny when you were little?
I will know.
When you were little, it's just hilarious, right? Because of the chasing and because of the nonsense. Do you watch it now too? There's a lot of subtleties, there's a lot of layers of comedy, and when you're a grown-up and you watch it, you laugh for different reasons than when you were a kid. A lot of shows, yes. It's true. But now, I mean, we haven't had cable in 12 years. But the old sitcoms, situation comedies, used to have some substance to it, and now it's just potty humor. It's just potty humor. People like potty humor, it's easy, right? No intellect involved, just, right? So there's something to be said for something that is well done and entertains versus something that's not well done and still entertains. And he's referring to Shakespeare. Was Cervantes, I wonder what his disposition towards Shakespeare was. Wow, he's a genius, or I can write like that.
Probably someone was a fellow Catholic trying to help.
That's a good point. We need to consult Doc White. I do not know the answer to the question I just asked, but I bet it's that. Who is that?
Huh?
Who is that? That's too little to be Corin, isn't it? That's too little to be Corin, isn't it? Oh, baby. Wow. It's true. And yet, because he wishes to suit the taste of the actors, not all his pieces have achieved, as have some, the perfection which art requires. Other authors pay so little attention to their task that when the play is over, the actors have to run away and hide for fear of being punished, as they have often been, for acting scenes offensive to some prince or libeling some family. No. Yeah, I think this is Shakespeare. He has to be referring to Shakespeare, right? Shakespeare.
Shakespeare was did it make fun of people? Okay. Well, I know he didn't do that with the Queen.
He did make fun of people, but I think that he might be talking about other
I think
playwrights as well.
was Virgil, I'm pretty sure, got kicked out for doing the same thing.
Virgil did? For making fun of people? Is that true? I didn't know that. Virgil? Now all these evils, and many more of which I will not speak, would cease. If there were some intelligent and judicious person at court to examine all the plays before they are performed, not only those that are acted in the capital, but all that are to be played anywhere in Spain, then no magistrate in any town would allow any play to be performed without this man's approbation under his hand and seal. And so the comedians would take good care to send their plays to Madrid, and could act them in safety. The writers too would take more pains with their work out of the fear of the rigorous examination they would have to pass at the hands of someone knowing the business. In this way, good plays would be produced and the purpose of such entertainment successfully achieved, which is not only popular amusement, but also the good reputation of Spanish genius, the profit and security of the actors, and the avoidance of the need to punish them. Now, if the same person or some others were entrusted with the task of examining newly written books of chivalry, no doubt some would be produced of the perfection your worship requires, thus enriching our tongue with the charming and precious treasure of eloquence, and causing the old books to be eclipsed in the bright presence of the new.
Was Ovid.
Ovid?
I know by Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, you know, his Metamorphoses, Colleen read it. It's very interesting. Did he morph? Colleen, did Ovid morph rulers?
Well, he wrote it like a year before he was exiled, so probably has something to do with it.
They would provide honest
Ovid.
What? Ovid?
Sorry, you're cutting in and out. You asked if Ovid was what?
Thomas just said that it was Ovid who got exiled for making fun of the ruler Marcus Aurelius in his writings. Did he do that in Metamorphoses?
Not in Metamorphoses, but definitely in, like, there's the Odes to Horace, and it tells about his adventures, like, while he was in exile. So Thomas is right. It's not Horace, it's Ovid, but in the Ode to Horace, it also speaks of Ovid's adventures. I just got that book. Maureen gave it to me.
They would provide honest amusement, not only for the idle, but for the busiest of men. For it is impossible for the brow to always be bent. It is impossible for the brow to always be bent, nor can our frail human nature sustain itself without some lawful recreation. Okay, so when the canon and the priest had reached this point in their conversation, the barber rode forward, caught them up, and said to the priest. So they're going back and forth. Is all entertainment equal? No. Is it better to have entertainment that is also educational and thought-provoking?
Yes.
Yes. At times, however, man needs a break from thinking, so it's okay to just laugh, to just be entertained. But if we just had someone regulating who's writing these plays and what they're saying, we could make sure that you wouldn't fall so low as to just have the rom-coms of today, not the rom-coms, the sitcoms of today, which are just potty humor. This is also going back to the Greeks' understanding of entertainment. The Greeks were not, especially the philosophers, were not up for entertainment for the sake of satisfying the lower appetites. It should always be that even your entertainment elevates. True?
Yes.
Yes. Anya says yes.
Well, anything done properly should elevate.
Right, because baseness that's going to bring you down, you shouldn't have that in any part of what you do, because it's not good for your soul. Here, Master Priest, is the place I told you of. We can take our siesta here, and the oxen will find plenty of fresh pasture. Looks good to me, replied the priest, and told their intentions to the canon, who was attracted by the sight of the lovely valley before them and decided to stay with them. And so as to enjoy the scene and the conversation of the priest, for whom he had taken a liking, and to hear Don Quixote's adventures in greater detail, he ordered some of his servants to go to the inn, which was not far away, and bring enough for all of them to eat, as he had decided to rest there that afternoon. One of his servants replied, however, that the baggage mule, which must be at the inn already, carried sufficient provisions, and that they would need nothing from there but barley. If that is so, said the canon, take all our mounts there and bring the baggage mule back. While this was going on, Sancho saw the opportunity of talking to his master without the continual presence of the priest and the barber, whom he regarded with suspicion. So he went up to the cage and said, Sir, I want to relieve my conscience and tell you something about your enchantment. And that is that those two with their faces covered are our village priest and the barber. I think they played this trick of carrying you off like this because they're envious of your worship for beating them in doing famous deeds. Supposing then that I'm right, it follows that you are not under a spell, but humbugged and fooled. Now to prove it to you, I want to ask you one question, and if you answer me as I think you will, you'll put your finger on this trick, and I'll see that you're not enchanted, but you have had your wits turned upside down. What just happened?
Sancho figured it out.
Sancho, who knows and has been saying the entire book that his master is mad, is now making sure he's not mad so that he can understand that he's being made to feel mad because he's being tricked and not because he's actually out of his mind. Oh boy. Ask what you like, Sancho, my son, replied Don Quixote, and I will satisfy you and answer you to your heart's content. But as to your saying that the men accompanying us are the priest and the barber, our friends and fellow villagers, it may well be that they look the same, but you must not believe for a minute that they are really and truly are so. What you must believe and understand is if they are like them, as you say, it must be because my enchanters have taken on their likeness and semblance, for it is easy for magicians to take on any appearance they please. And they will have assumed the likeness of our friends to give you cause to think as you do, and to put you into a maze of conjectures, for which not even the clues of Theseus could extricate you. Theseus was in the maze, and the clue was the string that he could get out, in and out, right? Okay. Their intention will also be to confuse my brain and make me incapable of guessing the cause of this disaster. But if you tell me on the one hand that our village priest and barber are traveling here beside me, and if on the other I find myself caged, and know that only superhuman power could encage me, for no human strength would be sufficient, what would you have me say and think except that the manner of my enchantment is stranger than any I have ever read in any history than that treats of the enchantment of knights errant? So do not be disturbed by supposing that they are whom you say, but rest assured that they are no more the priest and the barber than I am a Turk. But as for these questions you wish to ask me, speak, for I will answer you, even though you will go on asking till tomorrow. Holy Mother, replied Sancho, raising his voice, can you possibly be so thick-skulled and brain-sick, your worship, that you can't see it's the sober truth that I'm telling you, and that there's more roguery than enchantment about this unfortunate confinement of yours? Anyhow, I will clearly prove it to you that you're not enchanted. Now tell me, as God shall deliver you out of this trouble, and as you would find yourself in the arms of my lady Dulcinea when you least expect it, stop your hocus pocus, cried Don Quixote, and ask what you will. I have promised already to reply faithfully. That's what I want, said Sancho, for you to tell me the whole truth, without additions or subtractions, as those, like your worship, who make a profession of arms under the title of knights errant are expected to do. I tell you that I will not lie on any matter, replied Don Quixote. Get on with your questions, for really, Sancho, you weary me with all your oaths, your supplications, and your preambles. Because Sancho's the one who's going on and on for pages, right? Well, said Sancho, I'm confident that my master is a good man and truthful, and so I'll ask you one question that's very much to the point. Speaking with all respect, your worship, since you've been cooped up and enchanted as you think in this cage, have you been taken with any desire or inclination to make either big or little waters, as the saying is? I do not understand what you mean by making waters, Sancho. Be more explicit if you want me to answer you fully. Is it possible that your worship doesn't understand what making big or little waters is? Why, boys learn that when they go to school. What I mean is, have you had no mind to do what nobody can do for you? What does he mean? Don't you have to go to the bathroom, sir? This whole time? Oh, I understand you now, Sancho. Yes, very often. In fact, I want to, at this moment, get me out of my plight, for things are none too clean. So, wait a minute. Sancho thinks that if you don't have to go to the bathroom, then you're enchanted for any, and then if you do, then you're not enchanted? Is that the idea? What? Tell me to go to 11:10. Chapter 49 of the shrewd conversation between Sancho Panza and his master Don Quixote. Okay, up till now, does Sancho do a lot of reasoning with Don Quixote? A lot of reasoning and arguing? We're saying no here. Zoomers? Yes or no?
Well, when he was something.
Well, he pretty much states, like, we need to sleep, we need food, I'd like some wine, I don't want to get beat up again. Can we, right? Yeah, and paint, and yeah, and I would really like you not to blow it with the queen, so that I can get my island. But now he's going to reason with Don Quixote. Okay. Said Sancho, now I've caught you. I was longing to know that with all my heart and soul. Come now, sir. Can you dispute the saying that's in everyone's mouth when someone's in a bad way? I don't know what's the matter with so-and-so. He doesn't eat or drink or sleep or answer straight when you ask him a question. It really looks as if he's bewitched. From which you may gather that people who don't eat, drink, or sleep or perform the natural functions I mentioned are enchanted. But if they have the desire your worship has, and drink when it's given them, and eat when they have something to eat, and answer all the questions they are asked, then they are certainly not bewitched. Is this good reasoning? It's a good argument. Yeah. Go Sancho. You are right, Sancho, replied Don Quixote, but I have told you already that there are many kinds of enchantment. And times may have changed the fashion from one kind to another. It may be usual now for people under a spell to do all that I do, although they did not before, so that there is no arguing or drawing conclusions against the customs of the times. I most certainly know that I am enchanted, and that is sufficient to ease my conscience, which would be greatly burdened if I thought I was not under a spell, and yet remained in this cage like an idler or a coward, defrauding the many distressed and needy of the succor I could give them. For there must be many at this hour in positive and urgent need of my help and protection. But for all that, replied Sancho, for your greater security and satisfaction, it would be well, I think, if you were to try to get out of your prison. I promise to help you with all my power and even to release you. Then you could try to mount once again on your good old Rocinante, who seems to be enchanted as well. He's so melancholy and sad. And when you've done that, we can try our luck and look for more adventures. If we don't succeed, there's still time to come back to the cage. As I promised you, on the faith of a true and loyal squire, I'll shut myself up alongside your worship if you should chance to prove so unlucky or I so stupid as not to bring off this plan of mine. But can we just try it out, sir? Because if you can break out of the cage, then it would prove you're not enchanted, and we could go help people, which is what you're saying you want to do. I am content to do as you say, brother Sancho, replied Don Quixote. And when you see an opportunity of managing my deliverance, I will obey you absolutely. But you will see, Sancho, how mistaken you are in your opinion about my misfortune. If anyone is going to do the character development essay, what just happened? What just happened?
Suddenly, Sancho's the one who's urging them to go on with the adventures, and Don Quixote just wants to sit.
Number one and number two, Sancho used reason to talk his master into something, and the master just said, I'll obey you. Absolutely. Wow. Is this the same Don Quixote? He's usually, Sancho, you idiot, what could you be thinking? You're so lowly, you're just a squire, you must follow my counsel. Flipperoo, dipsy-doo. And Sancho's doing it for the good of Don Quixote, yes?
I do
And Sancho sees the good, yeah.
think since Sancho is kind of a body, and not Quixote the soul, that when the soul wasn't performing his natural function, that it was going to the bathroom, that was basically, and him being bewitched was sort of not on the confession of the sacrament.
Oof, that's deep.
And he said he was enchanted, which is why he couldn't do what he needed to do. The sort of when the soul admired in sin doesn't know what it needs to do.
Wow. Yes.
To break out of his cage, he needed to prove that he was innocent, sort of like confession.
Yeah. Yeah. So the enchantment is more like you're mired and not truth, like that. Write that for your essay. You gotta come up with a thesis statement, write that. Our errant knight and ill-errant squire entertained themselves with this conversation until they reached the place where the priest, the canon, and the barber had dismounted and were awaiting them. The carter then unyoked his oxen from the cart and turned them loose in that green and pleasant place, whose freshness invited not only enchanted persons like Don Quixote, but also such a rational and sensible creature as his squire. Rational and sensible creature as Sancho? Sancho begged the priest to let his master out of the cage for a while, for otherwise his prison would not be as clean as decently required the accommodation of such a knight as his master was to be. The priest understood him and said that he would gladly oblige him, if it were not for fear that once Don Quixote found himself at liberty, he would play them one of his tricks and go off and never be seen again. Because they're trying to get him home, right? I'll go bail for his not running away, said Sancho. And I, for any sum, said the canon, particularly if he gives me his word as a knight, not to leave us without our consent. I give it, answered Don Quixote, who was listening all the time. The more so because anyone enchanted as I am is not at liberty to dispose of his person as he will. For his enchanter can make him powerless to stir from one spot for 3 centuries. And if he were to escape, he would be brought back flying through the air. Since this was the case, he said, they could certainly release him, especially as it would be to everyone's advantage. In fact, if they did not let him out, he protested he could not refrain from offending their noses, unless they were to retire to some distance. Anyone have a dog that they cage? Do you cage your dogs?
At night.
Yes. But you need to make sure that he's gone and done his business outside first. Because otherwise, what's going to happen in the cage? Yeah, it's not going to smell good. The canon took him by one of his hands, although they were tied, and on his pledged word, they let him out of his cage, at which he was vastly delighted. The first thing he did was to stretch his whole body, and then he went over to Rocinante and gave her 2 slaps on the haunches, saying, I still trust in God and his blessed mother, flower and mirror of steeds, that we too shall soon find ourselves in the state our hearts desire. You with your master on your back, and I on top of you, exercising the function for which God sent me into the world. After saying this, Don Quixote went aside with Sancho Panza to a distant spot, from which he returned much relieved, and still more eager to put his squire's plan into execution. The canon gazed at him and wondered at the strangeness of his crazy humor, and at the excellent sense he displayed in his conversation and in his answers, only losing his stirrups, as we have said before, on the subject of chivalry. And so once they were all seated on the green grass waiting for the provisions, the canon was moved by compassion to ask him. Okay, so the canon, who is this learned, sensible, progressive, intelligent man, says, I don't get this guy, because except when we're on the topic of chivalry, he seems like a normal person. There's an analogy here.
Open sheep clothing.
Don Quixote seems insane when he's talking about all the chivalry stuff, but otherwise he seems perfectly sensible and like other people.
Oh, live in the world, not of it.
Yes, yes, yes. These Christians seem like normal people until they start talking about their religion, and then you're like, you're an absolute fool. Why are you using beads to say prayers and thinking that Mary's gonna save the country? Because otherwise you seem normal and you do your job well, and when we talk about baseball or, other things, you seem normal. But we get you off on this topic and you're like, whoa, fool, you're insane. You think you're gonna get everlasting life if you just do some stuff and then you're doing this penance up on this hill and you didn't even do anything wrong. You're one of the most moral people I've ever met. And you're going to do penance? What you do?
Very good minutes over there.
The Empress, in fact, of the Americas. Okay. 2, 3, 4. Today's Monday. I want to say finish the chapter, but we're okay. We're okay for right now. Right? It's just... See you tomorrow.